Hey, hi, how are you? My name is Phil, and welcome back to some Deadlock. Today we're going to be talking about the Lash. They're one of my favorite characters at the moment, and over the past month or two, I've been playing them more and more and more, and I've been really enjoying my time on them. Their ultimate feels really good to grab multiple people with. They feel like they can actually duel pretty decently at the moment, which is quite surprising for a spirit-heavy carry. And on top of that, their slam just feels great. They're a really cool character, and I'd like to try and help more people understand them. So without further ado, let's hop into this beginner's guide to the Lash. Before we go any further, I'd like to give a general shout out to Ashires. They put out a video about a month ago. I was about a week or two into learning the Lash at that point, and their video really helped me get a better handle on the character. Now, I might say some stuff that they've said, but I might say some stuff they haven't said, because I'm not an Eterna 6 player looking through the eyes of Eterna 6 gameplay. I'm someone who plays around the Oracle Phantom level and looks through the eyes of that gameplay. So I do in fact hope that you still learn something new from this video. As always, let's start by talking about the kit. Ground Strike is Lash's first ability, and it's a very iconic part of their kit. You stomp the ground beneath you, damaging enemies in front of you. If you are in the air, it will push you to the ground at a pretty accelerated rate, and you are going to do extra damage. Now, the ability has a bit of a soft cap around the 25-meter mark, which if you don't know how tall 25 meters is, don't worry, I usually don't either. Just know that there is generally a soft cap, and when you're at the height of the map is when you will do your most amount of damage. The ability is really fun, it is really interactive in the mid to late game because of some of its upgrades, but overall it is your biggest source of damage and is the #1 way that you will be hurting people as the Lash. Now as for its general base ideas, it starts with 60 stomp damage that has a 0.8 spirit power multiplier, and it gains 5.5 damage per meter at a 0.04 damage multiplier, which is quite strong, but when it's 5 damage per meter, 0.04 adds up really fast. The upgrades for it are pretty straightforward at first, of minus 10 seconds cooldown, but the second upgrade is incredibly important. Struck enemies are knocked up and slowed by 50% for 3 seconds. This doesn't have to be done when you're off the ground. If you're already on the ground in a fight because you either got knocked down or had to hide from a knockdown or someone like a Bebop dragged you around, screw Bebop by the way, with your Lash, it's actually really useful to be able to just hit it and then knock them up and slow them in the similar way to how Dynamo's Stomp works, if you're familiar with Dynamo. It's actually quite powerful and overall adds a lot to Lash's utility even when you are stuck on the ground. Now at max level, Ground Strike actually gets even better. Your damage per meter scaling goes up by 110% basically, because in place of it being 5.5, it's now 11.7 damage per meter, and in place of 0.04 extra spirit scaling, it is 0.07 extra spirit scaling. So maxing this ability out will take your slam from being pretty okay in the early to mid game to Ground Strike will one-shot people in the late game if they don't have spirit resilience built up. Before we move past Ground Strike, I just want to make a note. Sometimes I'll refer to Ground Strike as Slam. That's just me misunderstanding Lash's naming conventions, and it's a really old mistake that has stuck with me. Death Slam is the name of the ultimate. Ground Strike is the name of the first ability where you slam yourself into the ground. I apologize if I accidentally mess them up throughout the course of the video. I do it subconsciously and often don't notice it. Lash's second ability is called Grapple. It's a really unique ability that you pull yourself through the air towards a target, and using Grapple also resets your limits of air jumps and dashes. Now, what does this mean? It means that when you click on something with Grapple, you will throw yourself through the air with increased velocity. It's 20 meters of jump velocity, which is a bit of an ambiguous term, but just know that this is faster than your normal jump by a good amount, and if you are trying to catch up to someone or trying to run away from someone, more often than not, the extra momentum Grapple gives you will make you move even faster to the point of most people can't keep up with you. A Lash with good grapple tech will often be hard for anyone to catch. Now, the upgrades are fairly straightforward for once. The first upgrade is just minus 17 seconds cooldown. Pretty straightforward, pretty basic, pretty normal stuff. The second one's also pretty basic. You get 20 meters of cast range, meaning you can cast it 20 meters further than you already could, which was already a pretty big range of 30 meters, pushing it to 50, and then you gain plus 7 weapon damage for 10 seconds when you activate it, which is, it's a bit of an odd one, that your gun just does 7 more weapon damage per bullet when you activate it. I think it's just an effort to make Lash a bit stronger through the mid to late game, and they just wanted to slap it on Grapple for the fun of it. The final upgrade is pretty powerful as well, though. On cast, you gain a stamina back out of thin air, which is crazy when you already have really good air movement, and you get plus 60% air control, which is once again a pretty ambiguous stat, but the bottom line is you will gain better control of your character in the air, and your air movement, especially without using the W key, will be a bit more intense and a bit faster in its own way. Not literally faster, but it will be faster in how you can adjust yourself on the fly. It's a bit of a strange one. It's something that you'll probably have to toy around with a lot, but it's also something that you won't hit in a lot of games because most Lash builds don't max grapple until the very, very end of the build. So this is something that you probably should learn to practice without and learn to practice with so that you learn the differences. Another final note about grapple is grapple has charges on it, meaning you can use stuff like rapid recharge and extra charge on it. However, because it doesn't do damage on its own, rapid recharge feels a lot worse for grapple, and quite a few builds will either just use a single purchase of extra charge or recharging rush and use the recharging rush to just make sure that you always have grapples when you need them. Flog is another important and powerful aspect of the Lash's kit and is their third ability. Now by default, Flog strikes enemies in front of you, going up to 20 meters away from you. It heals you for a portion of the damage dealt, 50% of the damage versus heroes and 16% versus non-heroes, but you can hit multiple non-heroes at once, so that heal is bigger than you think. It does 65 damage by default, it has 0.8 spirit scaling by default, and it has an attack angle of 30 degrees. Now, this is a term that's not used on most other characters at the moment. It basically just means that the angle going out from your character is 30 degrees from the center of your camera. So 15 degrees either direction of your middle camera is how wide the Flog's damage goes. It's a bit of an odd one, but I think it's in an effort to balance the ability around some of the other concepts that are going to be showing up later in the kit here. The first level applies a minus 35% move speed for 3 seconds on targets hit, which is really strong in lane. There's a reason why a lot of Lash builds will level Flog and put a point into it early on before doing anything else. But the next ability upgrade is honestly even better. You apply minus 30% fire rate, and the ability gets minus 16 seconds of cooldown, making it go from 26 seconds to 10 seconds. Meaning you are a very good harasser who does decent damage and keeps themselves topped up with the heal in lane with Flog. It's quite a strong ability. At max level, you gain 80 base damage, you gain 40 attack angle, making it a 70 degree attack angle, and on top of that, your heal goes up by 20%, turning it to 70% of your damage versus heroes and 22% versus non-heroes. All of these things together should make you realize how strong Flog is, because that's a lot of number-based increments in terms of damage. There's a reason why Flog is usually the ability that is maxed first in Lash builds over the Ground Strike. Despite the fact that Ground Strike is your bigger damage dealing ability, Flog's upgrades are just really, really good. And it's also your number one way of brawling and dueling in the early to mid game, so getting it upgraded and doing more damage, slowing people, slowing their fire rate, and making it easier to hit and heal more is usually very, very valuable. Death Slam, the Lash's ultimate. If Dynamo is the best ult in the game, the Lash probably has the second best ultimate in the game with Death Slam. It is a giant AoE ability that will latch your whip onto people. You will pick them up and throw them to a new location of your choosing. When they land, they take damage. It is by default 104 damage with 1.0 times spirit scaling. You throw them a maximum of 14 meters away from where you initially started with a spirit scaling of 0.14 meters. They get slowed by 50% when they get landed. It lasts for 4 seconds, and you have to be targeting them for 0.3 seconds before you can pick them up and throw them. This is a pretty complicated ability, and its targeting is a bit odd. It is not truly the circle that you see. It is basically a cylinder going up and down in the middle of the map, and as a result making it a little more complicated to grab people than you initially think. People can hide from it as well, and if you pick people up and they were behind cover, even if you latched onto them properly, they will often get stuck on that cover and not be pulled all the way up to you to be rethrown. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try and target as many people as possible to grab them and throw them, but that does mean that you just need to be a little bit careful with how you're using this ability. I will go ahead and throw this out there early. There's nothing wrong with grabbing one person and throwing them. Tons of other ultimates in this game are used to solo ult people. Viper's Bola is a giant AoE that stuns people, but the number of times you see a Viper solo ulting someone to make sure they die is pretty high, isn't it? Now let's talk about the upgrades. The first upgrade just gives you an extra 12 meters of throw distance, which means that you can just throw people even further. The next upgrade is 40 seconds of cooldown, taking it from a nearly 3-minute cooldown to a little less than a 2-minute cooldown, which is a pretty sizable upgrade in general because you want to use this quite often in big team fights. And then the final upgrade is the most important. You stun enemies when they land for 1.2 seconds, and you get an extra 6 meters of cast range, meaning that you can hit people from further away and you stun them when they land, which is pretty crazy. You also, I believe, stun them when you pick them up, but I believe that is the default function of the ultimate. It's a very strong ultimate. It does a lot of stuff. It doesn't really do a ton of damage overall. The damage is really followed up with your ground strike landing on their heads afterwards, but it is still something that is incredibly good. Let's talk through my build. Now, I am never 100% done updating these builds. They always get updated over time. As new patches hit, as characters get changes, but my builds should always stay up and be annotated and stuff. The ID for this one should be down in the description, but let's hop through it and talk through it and explain why I make the decisions that I do in it, and why it might be a little different than other people's that you've seen. Let's start with the leveling order. I like leveling ground strike first, and then I like going into flog afterwards, and then following up with grapple into the ultimate, because, well, once you level grapple, the only thing left to get is the ultimate. But in terms of points, I like to put a point in the ground strike early. If you're on side lanes, you can usually get aerial advantages over the enemy and spam ground strike on them over and over again for big damage from higher elevations, making that first point into it be really useful. I then like to get the 2 points into flog to get the move speed and fire rate down so that my lane fighting is even better. After that, I put the second point into ground strike so that people get knocked up when you hit them, and then I like to finish maxing out the flog. Unlike a lot of other builds, which will then immediately max out ground strike here, which is very much a viable thing, and if you're ahead and wanting to really rotate around and beat people up, maxing out ground strike here instead of going into these other 3 points that I have is a really good idea, but I like to get 2 points into Death Slam after I finish maxing out flog. I like to be able to throw people further. I like to be able to do it more often. I feel more impactful on the map in my levels of games as the Lash when I have more ultimates available. To follow up this idea, to make it easier on myself to do that, I then put the point into grapple before I finish maxing out ground strike, because I like to be able to be more mobile. Afterwards, I will finish maxing out ground strike, finish maxing out death slam, and then finish maxing out grapple. I don't really get the weapon damage early on grapple. I know that some builds have been getting it earlier because gun items are so good right now, but this is just how I've been leveling the Lash lately. Small side note before we go into the rest of the build. If I am stuck in mid lane as the Lash and no one wants to help me trade into either of the side lanes, I will level flog first. If you're stuck in the mid lane, you can't really easily get enough vertical distance to make the damage of ground strike be worthwhile, so leveling flog first and kind of skipping the points into ground strike and putting them into flog so that you get your 2 points earlier is really, really strong and really good in the mid lane. If you're on the side lanes, learn the vertical places to go and hide. I will probably put them later in the video, but there are also tons of other ways to do it that other people have made videos on as well. Ground strike on the side lanes is really strong because you can spam it pretty often and do really big chunks of damage to the enemy when they're not expecting it. Let's start talking right through the build now, though. So this is usually how I start it. You can sometimes swap Mystic Burst and Extra Spirit, especially if you're in the mid lane. Extra Spirit first is usually better, because Flog won't proc Mystic Burst until you have Extra Spirit for the most part, but they are pretty interchangeable. Side lanes, you almost always go Mystic Burst first, because it'll trigger on Ground Strike if you get enough vertical distance. But these two items are interchangeable, but they are always your first two items that you buy if you're not getting pushed out of lane super hard. Next is Extra Charge, because by the time you hit your 2400 souls, you will usually have gotten your third point, meaning that you will have access to grapple, and so as a result of that, you will be able to have 2 charges of grapple, meaning you can ground strike in and grapple out pretty consistently over and over again, really harassing the enemy team in the early game. We then go into Improved Spirit, because as you can see by the description, more spirit gooder. It makes all of your stuff hit harder early game, and you really like to hit hard early game, because believe it or not, while Lash is not a great early game character, they can apply a lot of pressure early game with the amount of damage they put out. And speaking of, Quicksilver Reload is the item that I typically use to fill out my 4.8k spike in Spirit. Now you can replace this with Cold Front at the moment, but I've really been enjoying Quicksilver Reload a lot. It makes your gun really effective in lane. You just put it on Flog, you shoot at people, run at them, slam them, flog them, and then Quicksilver Reload afterwards to get bonus damage on the flog and get that bonus fire rate and reloading of your bullets after you've activated the ability. It's quite strong and applies a lot of pressure in lane if the other team isn't ready for it. Now, optional lane items that I like to always include in my build, stuff like Healing Right, because Healing Right's just a good item right now, but it's especially good on the Lash, because a lot of the time, especially in the side lanes, you'll be engaging, hitting them with Ground Strike, hitting them with Flog, and then leaving, because you'll do that, you'll clear the wave, and then you'll go run boxes and get back up to higher elevation. When you're doing all of that, you're going to run healing right because it will heal you a little faster than an extra regen would, and because you're out of combat, because you're getting up high, healing right is a little safer to use, and the enemy team probably won't take it off you as easily. Resto Shot is more of a mid lane item, same with Headshot Booster. Both of them will help you be aggressive with your gun in-game. Your gun is a little better than you would think in the early to mid-game because of how accurate it is. It is a burst fire weapon, and as a result of that, you can really easily plink-plonk people with headshots in the early to mid-game, making stuff like Headshot Booster and Resto Shot heal you for 50 and deal 45 bonus damage that scales up as the lane goes on, making you a pretty impressive little threat with just your gun. Now, the green spikes are pretty straightforward. I'm not a big believer in Majestic Leap on Lash, same as the person that I have taken a lot of inspiration from, Ashires, but you can run Majestic Leap here over Stand Mastery if you really want to. I just prefer Stand Mastery. Because of how mobile you are in the air, the ability to control your air movement better by having more air dashes, as well as better distance, as well as better stamina recovery, just feels really good. I usually grab a point of stamina into Healbane, because then I'm not waiting on Stamina Mastery to be finished before I buy Healbane, and Healbane's just really good. Because you're trying to get active early on the Lash for the most part, that 275 health on hero kill that scales up with levels is quite impactful, and it also keeps people's healing down early so that they are much easier to take out, because lots of people run healing items in lane at the moment because lanes are just really aggro right now. Getting Healbane earlier means that you will just impact healing a little stronger than you would otherwise, and make stuff just go your favor a little more often. Now, once you hit the mid-game and you've gotten your purple and green spikes online, I usually like to just go ahead and buy Mystic Expansion. Mystic Expansion makes your ult bigger, makes you throw people farther. I think it's just a really good item to immediately slot into. You have 2 extra spots open even after you buy this, so it's usually not a big deal to be getting it this early. And if you're, in fact, struggling with slots, this build is pretty good at keeping you free and able to buy more items anyways. Next item on the docket is Mystic Shot, which, as you can see here, is already doing 110 spirit damage, even though I'm at level 0, and I only have my 4.8k spike. That's a pretty big number to be putting onto just a single bullet, so as long as you're careful with your shot, when you're trying to hit people with your Mystic Shot, you'll be dealing an extra 100 damage every time you shoot someone. Which will probably be a little higher because you get a little bit of natural spirit power as you level up, and you might have gotten some from golden statues or from sinner sacrifice machines and such. Now, a really important thing that I'll show off right here, before even talking about the next item, is that if you have all these items bought, you'll notice that Mystic Shot here, with no other bonuses at all, is already dealing 120 damage after we've bought Tank Buster, right? Tank Buster does 40 bonus damage and 8% of current health bonus damage to anything that does 165 damage or more. Even at our base numbers and without any other bonuses from any other things we could have picked up, Mystic Shot's already doing 120 spirit damage, meaning that as you level up and get more free spirit power, as you potentially pick up statue buffs for more free spirit power, if you have a purple buff, for example, Mystic Shot will proc Tank Buster and do a lot more damage than people are expecting. If you're really smart and good about using Mystic Shot in conjunction with Tank Buster, you'll be doing a lot of damage, and that's why Tank Buster is bought right after our next item that we're going to go back to talk about now, Headhunter. Headhunter is a great item for the Lash because, first of all, your gun's great. Second of all, you usually buy Headshot Booster in lane if you're in mid lane, for example. And on top of that, it gives you a little bit of movement speed. It heals you for your max health a little bit. And it also just does a good chunk of bonus damage. Plus, it gives flat weapon damage and flat bonus health here. So overall, it's just a really good item for Lash. And they're a character with such an accurate weapon that it's really hard to feel like Headhunter is a bad item to be buying. Now, after we buy it, you'll see a slight problem. If we don't get any extra slots unlocked, we can't buy compressed cooldown, which does really stink. And as we only have 17.6k at this point, you'll notice that we're just kind of trapped in the build. Now, if you really want to, you can sell off extra charge here so that you can get your cooldown. Or if you're like me, you can just help your teammate push lanes and force them to get you an extra slot as early as possible, because the Lash really likes to have extra slots available for all of his items. You could also just hold off and spend the extra money that you have stored up on Greater Expansion and Boundless Spirit, but the extra cooldown for more ults and then for more abilities in general is just really good to get. That's why the build is set up like this. Usually at this point, when you have about 20k souls, you'll have hopefully helped your team push down one of the 2 walkers on the enemy's team, and you'll be able to start getting more item slots for yourself. Now, odds and ends in Category 5 here are going to be ignored for a little bit in favor of talking about the late game damage spikes and late game survival options. So we're going to talk through these, we're going to talk through egg and potential sauce, and then we'll go back to those other items. So at this point in the game, if you have your 23k souls, barking into Spirit Burn is a pretty powerful damage spike. However, if the enemy team has knockdown, if they have a 7 stunning you out of the sky, if they have a Holiday who's trying to grab you with their lasso, you'll probably just want to buy Unstoppable next. It's not super exciting, it's pretty boring, but Unstoppable as like your 7th or, sorry, I can't count, 11th item here will really help you just overall be pretty strong. Now, if you're at this point in the game and you're still slot locked like this, you could potentially sell Healbane to get Unstoppable, because you're more or less at the point where hopefully your teammates also have extra anti-heal at their fingertips. And so you spending your money on Unstoppable will be a lot better overall for the game than you having a little bit of extra anti-heal if your teammates also have anti-heal. Now, sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and sell something. You can also sell Mystic Shot, because even though Mystic Shot synergizing with Tank Buster is a really big deal, it is a pretty cheap item that only gives 7 spirit power outside of its proc. You can also argue to sell Headhunter, because of it's not super synergistic with a lot of the rest of your build, and that it's kind of taken up a slot that could go towards a purple or green item to keep you alive. I personally vote for selling Mystic Shot first and holding on to Headhunter if you are having to sell items for slots. And if you are really good at making sure you conserve your grapples for when they matter, sell extra charge for more slots as well. Now, Spirit Burn and Unstoppable are the next items that you'll usually buy as the Lash because of how much damage Spirit Burn gives you and survivability Unstop gives you. After that, you usually get Boundless Spirit. Because of how much scaling this item gives you, it really makes it so that your ground strike will hit like a freight train. Next item that I typically suggest would be Arctic Blast if you have active slots open to toy with. If you have already bought other items for other reasons, Arctic Blast is pretty skippable. It is pretty good right now. You land, you deal a good chunk of damage, you deal frozen bonus damage with your Flog afterwards, and it's pretty good, but it is not the greatest item in the world at the moment. A lot of the time, you'll often be wanting to get Refresher instead, because being able to go, all right, I'm going to Lash Ultimate people, and then everyone hits their get out of jail free card and or their counterspell feels pretty bad. So in the mid to late game, quite often you'll do a Lash ult to bait out all that stuff, kill a little time, hit the Refresher, and then do it again and grab the entire enemy team and throw them way far away from where they want to be and end up killing all of them because of it. Refresher is a great item on the Lash, and sometimes you can even panic buy it in the super late game. By super late game, I mean they're pushing into your base. You can panic buy it to get a quick reset of an ult to throw the enemy team hopefully into your fountain, and if not, at least out of the pit so that they can stop hurting your patron. Other great late game items that help you survive better include Spellbreaker, which is just a generally good, you're getting stuck by Bebop bombs, you're getting hit by a Pocket who does 1,000,000 damage with Arctic Blast, you're getting hit by any other type of big Spirit Burst. Usually people buy this to deal with you, but you can buy it to deal with other people. Speaking of Pocket, Divine Barrier is actually the #1 counter to them right now. You can put it on yourself to cleanse yourself of affliction. You can also throw it on your teammates to just help them get out of dodge if they're being constantly assaulted by hard CC. You can buy it in place of Dispel Magic some games, but more often than not, it's a pretty luxury late game item where you don't want to get Dispel Magic, you'd rather just have Divine Barrier. Counterspell is also in here. It's mostly for Drifter, Apollo, Bebop, and Pocket, but it is here in case you are, for example, really good at counterspelling a Wraith ult, even though that's really hard to do right now. Speaking of egg, the item is actually really good on Lash at the moment, because if you buy it early and then you just go through your purple items as per normal, you'll usually get to a point in the mid game where you're just sitting on an egg that's worth like 2,000 souls, and then you can just pop it, get a bunch of free statue buffs, and then finish buying out a couple of items really quick. It's also really good if you're the type of person who likes to go into, say, Trophy Collector on the Lash to get some extra souls in the early to mid game without trying to steal waves from people. But overall, I just kind of like it at the moment. I think it feels pretty good on Lash, but that's just personal preference and the pace of the games that I'm in. Resto Locket is an item that's seeing a lot more play at the moment because of just how strong it got buffed recently. It has 10 Spirit Resist by default. You heal 20 health per stack that goes up with your boons, so it goes up and up and up. You can restore up to 4 stamina when you activate it, which if you're buying Stam Mastery, it's pretty good. So buying this in place of Healbane means you would have access to basically 9 stamina in a row, which will allow you for multiple air dashes if you're resetting with grapple. But it's also just something people are liking at the moment because a big chunk of heal out of nowhere after you basically get away from all of the anti-heal effects people have put on you can help you turn fights and really just end people out of nowhere. It's also just good to have more stamina when you're trying to run away from a fight or chase down and engage in a fight. So overall, it's been pretty good at the moment. Recharging Rush is typically an item you'll only buy if you've also bought Headhunter, because just like Dynamo, if you hit a Headhunter headshot, Recharging Rush will typically instantly proc and give you back a charge of your ability. It means that you could get rid of extra charge in the build if you're really good at using Headhunter Recharging Rush to immediately reset your grapple when you need another one, but that is not the most beginner-friendly tech, which is why it's down here in the potential sauce category. Let's talk about Category 5 up here, which will probably be renamed by the time this build comes out. This is just generally good mid-game items that can replace other things in your build. You can replace Healbane with Dispel Magic, for example, if they're running stuff like Shiv and Infernus, and you just really need to get rid of those debuffs on you. Warpstone's really good if they're a mostly gun-focused team, and it also gives you some crazy movement mid-air, and once again is also a pretty good replacement for Healbane. Cold Front is in here if you don't like Quicksilver Reload that much, and you'd rather just run Cold Front to slow people down, do some bonus damage to them, and upgrade into Arctic Blast in the late game. Toxic Bullets is here because it's not that bad on Lash. 11% buildup per shot is not the fastest, but it's not that hard to build it up on Lash. And if you'd rather just not go Headhunter and just have a single gun item to help you just do more damage across the course of the game, but you also want to do more max health percent damage across the course of the game, Toxic Bullets is a pretty good option. It's not something that I would usually recommend. More often than not, I say just get Healbane, but it is in here in case you really want it and you possibly just want even more anti-heal and you want to have Healbane and Toxic Bullets at the same time. Odds and ends down here is stuff that you won't normally buy most games, but is in here in case you need it. You'd be surprised to see Transcendent Cooldown down here, but it's because you don't usually buy this item unless you have 3 or 4 active items at the same time, because it is not that much extra cooldown over Superior. Superior cooldown is 20% for all your abilities. This is only 25% for all your abilities. You're getting 5% cooldown. You also get a little bit out of combat regen, but whatever. The big thing is that you get 25% item cooldown reduction when you buy this, but if you don't have items, like you can see, the base build doesn't have items, it's usually not worth the money, and you'd much rather save up for another better item. Silence Wave is in here because sometimes you just need to silence that Mino, that Apollo, that Dynamo, that someone who's causing problems for your team, that Victor, and it's just a pretty okay item. It did get nerfed somewhat recently to not be quite as strong as it used to be, but I think people are now underbuying it because they saw it was nerfed. Cursed Relic is in here because as much damage as the Lash does, your ultimate is a setup ultimate, and you do not always need to be the biggest damage dealer for your team. And if you've realized early that you're not going to be the biggest damage dealer because, say, you have Viper Wraith on your team and they're just shredding through people, and your job is going to be setting up with big ultimates to drag them closer to those gun carries, Cursed Relic can be a pretty good buy for you because it can shut down, say, the Victor on the enemy team who's giving your gun carries problems. It's not the greatest buy every single time, but sometimes you just need more than one Cursed Relic on the team, or you just need a Cursed Relic on the team, so it's in the build for that reason. Kind of the same as Metal Skin, you will often not be using this, but sometimes there's just enemy gun carries that are giving you problems. Haze, Drifter, Viper, Wraith, the classic M1 carry problem children, and this is pretty good against them. Same reason that Plated Armor is in the build. This is usually better against Mina and Furnace because this also deflects proc items as well, but I typically wouldn't buy it unless they have the proc items as well as the proc in their build. Like, I don't think I would buy Plated Armor for just a Wraith. I'd probably buy it for a team that has Drifter Mina on it because they both have Toxic Bullets, and this also helps deflect Mina build up from Love Bites. So people have been playing a little more Gun Lash, and as you can tell, this is just a recent addition to the build. It's been a couple of days since I last recorded. People have been playing a bit of a hybrid gun lash in the higher level of games lately, and these three items down here are part of what you can do if you want to be more gun lash. Crippling Headshot is quite good because, well, first of all, if you're already building Headhunter and playing around hitting your headshots on Lash, that means you're now shredding bullet resist, spirit resist, and shredding their healing reduction, making this just a generally good item, even if it's a bit expensive. There's also Siphon Bullets, which, because of how accurate Slash Gun is, you will pretty often just siphon away 2.5% of someone's max HP for hitting a bullet. And because Spirit's just not as good as of the patch where I'm recording this, Siphon Bullets feel really overpowered. Ballistic Enchantment's also in here because it's an item that I've toyed on and off with and also belongs in this category of a pretty good gun item that you can be using. You put it on Flog, and then you make your Flog bigger as a result of that, and then when you hit the enemy team with the Flog, you gain a pretty large chunk of weapon damage, 20% per person hit, which really does add up. So the Lash has some weirdness with how you want to move around the map. Something that you often will want to do is get up in the air and then bounce around the tops of buildings and then come down to do damage. Something else that kind of is tied with that is the fact that Ground Strike can work when you are slightly beyond the character because the hitbox for it goes slightly behind you, as you can see from the fact that even though I was looking the other direction, they still got knocked up into the air. These things together make it so that your movement tech on Lash can change a lot based on how you're playing the game and how the fights are going, and landing directly behind someone or right on top of them can still make sure that you hit them with full damage and knock them up in the air as long as you're still actually hitting them. This little tiny thing that hangs out behind you is quite small, as you can tell from the way that once I move forwards even a couple of steps, it stops hitting them. Like, you have to be very, very close to them in order to hit them with it. But it does make it so that if you're just landing directly on someone with Ground Strike, you will be able to still hit them. On the subject of directly hitting people with Ground Strike, you can actually knock people out of the air with it. It's a bit difficult to do, but people like Mina and Vindicta and Grey Talon, if you hit them directly with your character model, the big ol' Lash here, with Ground Strike, you will knock them out of the air and hit them onto the ground. Now, I believe this doesn't cancel any flight abilities anymore like it used to, but it is still useful for getting them onto the ground and pulling them out of the sky so that your team can have an easier time taking them out. More useful, interesting information about the Lash is that when you're popping ultimate, you can hit it while you're still moving before you throw someone around. Meaning that you can hit it while you're in the middle of a piece of movement, and the ultimate will still go off properly. A really easy thing to do is to get some momentum going off of some stuff, and then use that momentum to grab people out of the sky. It's really easy to do it off of a zipline, because zip lines carry your momentum if you're doing them correctly, and it's also really easy to do off of a wall jump into other pieces of movement tech. Wall jumping into this will often move you just a little bit further than you would otherwise, and if you have tons of momentum built up before you go into your ultimate, you will slide along the screen, basically, making it so that your ultimate will make you move further. This is the type of thing that can be combined with Warpstone, so that you get to go even further when you're using your ultimate to grab people who are otherwise just ungrabbable. We're now on the actual map to talk about these last few talking points. Something that's interesting is if your constructs, like your Guardians and your Walkers, are active, you can actually grapple to them and use them to move around. However, if they are not active, you will not be able to grapple to them. What I'm about to show you here is why you don't like to be in the mid lane as Lash. On the side lanes, there are tons of really high up rooftops, like that one over there, that you can climb up and get almost to the top of to hit Ground Strike from. In mid lane, you have this little roof here, that little roof there, that little thing behind the sign, and then that little thing behind the sign. And that is about as high in the air as you can get. So you can really only get about that high in the air when you're going to use your Ground Strike, and it's quite difficult to get from here all the way to the other half of the lane to be able to hit people. Now it's really good if you're on the defensive and you're hiding behind this sign, and then you want to jump out and hit someone that's on your stairs, and that's really useful. However, as I'm sure you've noticed, these are not very big jumps compared to the other ones that I'm about to show you. If, for example, you're on this half of the map where you get to have this little rooftop here as part of your everything, you can use this little rooftop here to set up really easily for slams onto people in the lane below. It's quite simple to just jump off, you get a little double jump in the air, and then you can hit people almost all the way over onto their steps, which just allows you a lot more freedom of movement. You can say pretty similar things to when you're on this side of the map. You can climb up onto this little rooftop here. It's not the best spot as you are very much out of cover, but you can jump yourself all the way up to here and use this and bounce off of this to get yourself a little more height for some slams. However, usually that side over there is a little bit better. You also have this rooftop right up here that you can use to set up slams, but this is better used to jump off the wall, potentially get up to here to bounce off of this to keep your height, to then land. These are all things that I've learned from watching other Lash players, namely Ashire's. Their video was super helpful for me, and their video goes into a lot more detail about how to set up for stuff like this, and where the best spots are on the map to do this. This is just something that I think is a generally beginner's tip, is to find these high spots on the map, specifically look for the ones that are as high as that over there, and use those to hit your ground strikes in lane. So that's that. That's a beginner's guide to Lash. We don't go into too much detail in these beginner's guides because there is so much to talk about with each individual character. I just try and generally give some tips, talk about some ideas, and make sure that people understand the basics of how to play the character so that they can learn and enjoy this game better. Hopefully you learned something new, and if you didn't, I'm sorry. There's tons of other great guides out there that'll be able to give you a hand. For now, thanks for hanging out and watching. Y'all are cool and I appreciate you, and I hope to catch you all in the next one.